All right, why don't we, what do we call the meeting to order? We have a quorum. In accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 30, subsection 1825. This meeting is held in a hybrid format. Members of the public who wish to participate, the meeting may do so in person or via Zoom. It is being recorded. We'll start with a roll call of those present in the room.
Brent Nelson.
Okay.
Ed Bizzaro present.
Bob Fleming. Steve Callahan present.
Peter Michelson. Jeremy Marset, present.
Okay, and then those on Zoom, you could just say your name and present.
Matt Eldred participating remotely.
Jill Rafter participating remotely.
Great, thank you. So tonight, before we jump into, we have the school budget tonight, which will take up a big part of our meeting. But before we jump into that, I wanted to at least just go through our calendar over the next few meetings. So we have tonight's meeting, and then we have the 28th, which is the warrant hearing. Everybody should make sure they attend that one. And then we've added a new meeting on April 3rd, which is a Monday. And then there's the April 11th meeting. Okay, and if we need one, I believe there's one. There is one on April. We have a date, April 25th, if we need it. I'm hoping we won't need it, but if we need it. So it's tonight, the 28th of March, April 3rd, which is a Monday, April 11th, and then if we need it, the 25th. We'll probably do the capital and facilities budgets on the 28th, and then park and rec and articles on the 3rd, and the 11th we'll do articles. That's just to give everybody a heads up on what's ahead of us. We are making progress. So after tonight, we'll make a lot of progress, hopefully. I guess we'll start with the school budget. Jeff, do you want to just introduce everybody who's here? And then if you and I guess Mike could sit at the table, that would be better. And I think for purposes of this, we have a couple new members on the committee this year. So, they may not be as familiar as everyone else with the acronyms.
Sure.
So probably as we go through it, ask questions. We'll probably interrupt you,
Sure, no
as we go through it rather than wait to the end. Does that make sense, Ed?
Sure.
Yeah. So Ed, you want to kick it off or?
Sure, well, I won't be long because we've got a long meeting. But I want to start off by thanking Jeff and Mike for their many explanations and details around the budget. There wasn't a question that we asked that we didn't get a full answer. When we looked at this, we don't just look at the increases from X to Y, this X number of dollars, but we go into the body of, all right, what's behind that increase, behind that account, and what's in it. As we know, payroll is 83% of the budget here, and there's a couple of schedules in there that will talk to payroll in terms of breaking it out into its component parts and the number of FTEs and the operating account and revolvers. And the expenses, we took a deeper dive this year into the high school, because high school was a $10 million plus budget, and by far and away the biggest budget. Without further ado, I'll just turn this over to the two experts in the room who I can't thank enough for all their help.
Well, thank you, Ed. I mean, I want to thank you for all the additional hours that both you and Steve put in during this process. We all set now? We're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up on the screen.
Okay. So we're going to go through a few slides. I'll do the overview and then.
Excuse me, is it showing on Zoom? I don't see it.
Oh man, now I see the Apple view.
There we go. How's that?
Yeah, now they can see. Can you see that, Mather?
Yep.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay,
Great. So we have a few slides at the beginning. We'll go over some of the general budget terms and some of the process which we did, and then Mike will go into some of the detail that he and Ed had worked on with some of their schedules, as Ed had mentioned before. But I think, we've done a pretty good job with the budget. We've had a lot of meetings, and we've tried to reduce what we can. Right now, I know that there's a request from the Warrant Committee of the town to reduce the budget more. So we'll be presenting that information to the school committee on Thursday night. Give them a menu of options of what we would recommend the reductions be, if any, and then they'll make their decision, based on that. And then hopefully if we get to a point on Thursday where there's some agreement with the school committee, they'll vote on a new number and we'll be ready to go. So that's fine.
Morning.
We skip one? No. Okay, so we had some assumptions when we built this budget, and they're very typical to what we do year to year. One is that the federal entitlement grants we level funded. So we received federal entitlement grants. The biggest one is 94,142 with our special education program. We just assumed they'll be level funded when we built this budget. Chapter 70, which is the money that the state sends to the town, which is earmarked directly for education. We anticipated that would be level funded. The first budget that came out, it was a $30 increase to chapter 70 per student. So we are one of the 141 districts in the state that are held harmless districts, which means we get the minimum amount, which is the $30. If you go a couple of miles to the left, West would get 1.1 million increase. We got 72,000. So we don't typically benefit much from the state in the last 10 or 15 years, and that looks like that trend is continuing this year as well. We've also looked at the continuation of our tuition-based programs, and we're looking at expanding our preschool this year. So we're looking at adding another classroom of preschool at Wheelock. We've had, waiting lists every single year, some as high as 75 students on waiting lists. And we wanted to really expand our preschool program to offer opportunities for our students and for our parents. So we are going to add another class at Wheelock, where most of our preschool is held at the Memorial School right now. So that is already full. We've had a registration area that's full, and there's a waiting list for that one classroom over at Wheelock. And then circuit breaker, which is the money that the state reimburses us the year after we spend it on special education, will be funded at 75%. So we are looking at hopefully getting that funded at 90% by the end of the year. That's what my association, the School Superintendent Association, is working on, and hopefully the legislature will come through with a 90% reimbursement. So that is, if we spend over the threshold of a certain number, which is 3 times the allowance for special education, whatever that number might be, it might be 41,000, 42,000, whatever that is. What we spend over that, we get reimbursed at a rate of 75%. And they just 2 years ago started adding transportation to that, which has been a big help. So you can imagine if that goes to 90, we'll be in much better shape around special education. So some of our drivers are pretty typical for school districts. Instructional costs and personnel costs, as Ed had mentioned, it's about anywhere from 80 to 83, 84% of any school budget is going to be your personnel costs. Market projections in the utilities. I know you've seen it in your home with your electric bills at home, or we're seeing it with the schools as well in our buildings. So that's going to be a budget driver for us. We're at the year 3 of our transportation. With Conley, which is our big yellow buses, and our special education transportation is to accept. And that's obviously a driver that tends to go up with the fuel cost. With special education, again, typically a driver in most districts, in district positions and out district placements are always drivers in special education. And we want to always continue to provide professional development. So we have 3 buckets of professional development in our district. We have course reimbursement, which we allocate by contract $42,500 each year for course reimbursement. That allows teachers to take courses that we approve, and then they get reimbursed a percentage of that. There's also conferences and travel. So if teachers want to go to a conference outside, we can provide that for them and sign them up. And the last one is research and development. So we allocate a sum of money each summer for teachers to work on projects within our district, whether it's developing a course, working on grading, whatever that might be. And that's pretty popular with our teachers and really impacts our student achievement, which is great. So those are our 3 buckets: professional development, which we allocate funding. So one of the things that we always like to talk about in our budget are the 3 funding sources that we use. So it's not just state money and then local tax money, but we try to generate as much money as we can to offset those costs as well. So if you're looking at FY '23, our current year, chapter 78 is 6.5 million. Local contribution is almost 33 million. But then we generate through grants, fees, and tuitions another $4 million. So that's really an important part to recognize, because if our budget's 39 million, it really costs 43 to run it. And we've been really committed to be aggressive with grants and aggressive with tuitions and trying to make sure that we can generate as much revenue as we can within the district. Just to put it in context, this year in FY '24, we will be funding 54 full-time positions outside of the local and state money. So through our revenue generation and in our grants, tuitions, and fees. So that's pretty good. I mean, we're 51 positions outside of the operating budget. It's significant savings to the town and still provides the services that we look for in our district. And then I always want to get the
Sorry, I'm one of the new people, so I didn't want to introduce my name. I'm Peter Michelson. We talk about tuitions. What do you need?
We talk about tuitions. We're looking at preschool and full day kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a pretty extensive full day kindergarten program, which this year I think coming up we'll have 163 or 170 something. I have to look at the numbers, but people that are paying tuition $3,500 a year for that. And then we have multiple programs in our preschool. So we have 2-day options, 3-day options, 4-day options, full day, half day. So all those are tuition-based programs that allow us to pay for the teachers that we need in those programs and offset the costs and not put in an operating budget.
Great, thank you.
So our budget analysis and looking at the increases, go back one. So we always like to feature kids in our presentations. So this is a really neat thing that we do each year. So every year in September, the first week of school, we take the entire senior class on a cruise to Boston, and we have dinner and they have a great time. But it's just a really good bonding event that we have for the kids, and it starts off their senior year great. Even though they haven't had a snow day yet this year, they tell me all the time. They started off the year with a great senior cruise, and we've done that for the last 10 years or so in the beginning of the year, which has been great. So looking at our increases in our analysis, pretty straightforward in terms of where the increases come from. So our teachers, steps, lanes, increase in longevity is 1.2 million. So a teacher gets an additional step each year they're working in the district. And then lanes is a horizontal move on the pay scale based on attainment of additional degrees or credits. A percent increase is your cost of living increase, which is fairly typical. And then longevity is a one-time bonus that teachers might get based on the amount of time they've been in the district, starting at 15 years, 10 or 15 years. So we've increased that in the last couple of contracts. I just want to say how fortunate we are to be. Last year we negotiated our contract. We negotiated a 1 year and a 3 year. So to be locked up with Uniday 4 years allows us to really be able to plan budget-wise what we're doing. I think you just have to look at the news, even this morning with Wellesley. You're starting to see districts that are going on strike this year. There's lots of issues around collective bargaining in the state, and we were fortunate enough to work with the school committee and the teachers union to get that done last year. So we're pleased about that.
So Jeff, the 4 years 102 when?
So the 3 year starts next year in FY '24. So this year was the year one of the extension, and then 3 years beyond that.
Thank you.
The FY '24 is the first.
It's the first.
Yeah,
24, 5, and 6.
6, yeah, so that's
very good.
that's very good, yeah. I
It
mean,
just allows us to plan, and certainly we can see there's no surprises there. We know exactly what we're getting into the next, 3 years and 4 years for us because of what this current year.
Have you ever been able to do that before?
This is the second time we've done a 1 and a 3, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it last contract cycle too. And we've only done that with Unit A, so we have other associations too. So we have a Unit B, which are all our teacher assistants, and then we have custodians, cafeteria workers and administrative assistants too that have their own unions. So we've only done the 1 and the 3 with the teachers union. We think it makes the most sense with obviously the largest union, the largest costs.
Yeah,
It allows us to plan a little better.
it seems like we're very fortunate on the timing of that.
Very well done.
We would have had a bigger problem.
Different collective bargaining units to deal with.
5.
School committee.
Yeah. So I think, the other increases that you see, the guidance counselors at Memorial, at Wheelock, those are from the ESSER grant that we had this year. So we had ESSER grant was a federal COVID grant, that we were, we only allocated 64,000, something like that. What was it? No, 360 something. We had some thinking what we have left over.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, many districts got in the millions. It's just not what Medfield gets, unfortunately. So we really tried to allocate that really smartly this past year, but we're gonna have some carryover, it looks like, next year that will allow us to reduce the budget in some areas. The assistant athletic director was 31,000. We'll have some money left over for that this year because the assistant athletic director we hired left after the fall season. So we have some money there as well. Teaching assistants that we have the 1.5, and then the increase for unit B in the contract for teaching assistants, the 153. And then everybody else that is either in a union that I mentioned or non-union increase would be 144,954 with a total of 1.7 million. One of the things you'll notice up there with tuition to special education, even though it's typically a driver, you'll see that we have a decrease of 243. And that's really due to students aging out of the district and some folks moving. So that just happened to happen this year. As you know, there's been, I don't know if you've seen it in the news, but there's been some feedback. The state raised the tuitions 14% in private special education schools, which typically raises it 1 to 2%. But there's a kind of out the door agreement when Governor Baker left that it was going to be a 14% increase, which is really crippled a lot of districts because it was smaller to us because of what we had going on here. But some districts, it's $1 to $2 million increase that they just didn't plan for because you typically have a 1 or 2% increase, not a 14%. So that's kind of been in the news a little bit, with districts, and our association held a legislative breakfast a couple of weeks ago to really work with the legislature to try to change that. And hopefully we'll get some relief at some point with that. Other district services and increases, supplies and services at 29,000, utilities, again, that was a big budget driver at 169, tech equipment at 24, and our transportation, which is contractual, at 256. So Michael and Ed worked on a lot of these schedules. I know that Michael will take over from here, and I'll just be room to interject whenever I can.
So when we met with, Ed and Michelle, our school committee, the warrant committee, wanted to see different type of schedules that are above and beyond than what we presented to our school committee. So, with Ed's assistance and did a few of these spreadsheets, we broke down the school budget into different categories. One of the spreadsheets that we did, which is actually, this came out of school committee's budget, is we looked at the budget by school and then by central office, and then we break central office into the 3 categories that we report to the state, which is administration, district services, and student services. And as you can see, the drivers of our budget, for the most part, in the schools, and the reason why the schools' budgets look higher is because that's driven by salaries, which we will see in the next slide. So as you can see, we have a fiscal 22 budget, fiscal 22 actuals, fiscal 23 budget, which is this current year, and then you see the fiscal 24 request. Again, the biggest drivers are within the school. Someone could ask, why is the Blake Middle School only going up 2.8%, when the rest of the other schools are going up, between 8 and 6 point something percent. And the reason behind that is that Blake Middle School did have some retirements. We took in consideration those retirements, which drives the increase down.
And again, for the ignoramuses in the room, district services and student services broken out from other things. What are those, like cost of deans, cost of?
So student services are services that we provide students, guidance, nursing, special education. Those are all considered student services, which the Department of Education says we need to report as one category. Your district services are your technology department, your athletic department. There's other services that are provided by the district that are reported separately. Okay, and then your administration is your central office staff.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind on these percentages is that they, depending on the mix of teachers in each school, you could have really young teachers that are getting big increases early in their career. And more senior teachers that don't get those 9%ers, in some years. So it really depends on the makeup of the teachers.
Yeah, if you're looking at a situation where teachers are at top step, they're getting the cost of living.
Yeah.
They're not getting the step increase, they're probably not getting horizontal lane increase, they're just getting the cost of living. So
Yeah.
it all depends on what the makeup of the teachers are in that school, and that really drives everything.
We thought it was a good idea to start with from the top down. It's $1.9 million increase, 4.98. So break it out by functional area. So we thought that'd be a good way to just start the presentation. Gives you a little bit of perspective. You can see what we talked about a little bit earlier, the size of the high school relative to all other cost center. And the reduction that Jeff just referred to in special ed is within the student services there. We saw that reduction on the prior schedule of 200,000+, and that's out of that negative 82,000. So
Which you make a great point, because while we were meeting, you guys had a question about certain percentages are greater than, what the dollar value is. And when we had that conversation, so you can't look at the percentages. For instance, if you look at the high school, it's going up almost 700,000. It's only a 6.7% increase. Well, it's only a 6.7% increase because that line item is greater. So if you look at, let's say, Memorial, with an 8.3% increase, it's because that budget is a small budget. So you always have to look at the actual dollar amount and not the percentages. And as we go through, I'll show you a better scenario, better
it's a lot of little numbers.
example.
Yeah, there's a lot of little numbers right there.
So, so we took the payroll and we broke the payroll down into, again, the different functions that we actually report out. So teacher steps and lanes, that's strictly call it the teacher's base salary, right? And that's going up 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million, which is a 5.17% increase, right? Paraprofessional, that their base salary, and that's going up 245,000. And again, if you look at the percentages at 16.81%, it doesn't really reflect what the dollars are, because it's the dollars that drive the budget. All other staff, as the superintendent explained earlier, that's your custodians, your special office, your administrators, they're lumped into that one line item, which is 141,000 increase. And it's asked us to break down the longevity. The majority of that goes into teachers, which is the unit A line item. And after certain years, which again, Jeff explained, they get a dollar amount for their, years of service. And so that is an increase of 33,000. Stipends are anything above the contractual obligations, which can be coaching, can be extracurricular activity, can be, someone going on a trip, overnight trip. So there's different categories and different stipends that we, mostly the unit A, that we built into the budget. It is part of the contract, but it's a separate appendix of the contract.
In the previous contract we had, not the one we just negotiated, the previous one, we had a provision there. We went through every single stipend. And we looked at our, comp towns that we typically do our new negotiations. We look at Holliston, Hopkinton, Wayland, and Westwood. And we tried to see whether, ours were competitive, and they just weren't. I mean, the stipends hadn't been looked at in years. So that was some adjustments that we made in the last contract that, drives some of those increases in stipends.
Substitute line item is staying the same. And overtime, there's only two units to get overtime, and that is the custodians and their administrative assistants. So those are the two units that get the overtime increase. That 8,000 is built in there because that's part of the new contract that we signed with them.
You can see that substitute line items come down quite a bit from COVID. Right.
Yes, so you had 2020, 2021, and 2022 were your COVID year.
Yes, for sure.
So then we looked at FTEs, and we looked at that in two buckets. The first one up top is your operational, which is the dollars that are spent by the taxpayers. And your second FTE category is the one that Jeff spoke to earlier, which is your grants to revolving accounts. Those are the FTEs that are separate from the operational because either, you know, they're out of revolving accounts for fees. They're, rental fees are in there, and there's also private grants, and there's also our public grants that make up that bucket. So what we looked at here is if you look at the top part, the operational side for next year, as of right now, was projected to go up 3 FTEs, and we would reduce the 3 FTEs from the grants in the bottom. And the reason for that was because the ESSER grant, right, was coming to an end, and those positions that were funded by a grant were now going to be funded through the operational dollars. The other thing that, this actually slide shows that your actual FTEs in your operational side in 2020 were 391. And if you look at the 2024, it's going to be 381, which is 10 less FTEs than we got in 2020. Now, you can say that that was because of COVID and we had to add staff in 2020, but in the next few slides, you'll see that we have been reducing the FTEs in the past few years. Any questions on this one? And then, which is this slide right here, if we look at the Medfield enrollment history, and we went all the way back to fiscal year 11 because that was the peak of the enrollment here in Medfield. And again, Jeff and I looked at the historical enrollment, and it falls in the same trends. You have your ups and downs. Back in the 70s, we hit about 2,900 students. We hit 2,900 students back in the 90s. You hit it again. So it's every 30 years that you're seeing a spike in enrollment, but it never goes up over 3,000. It's always right under 3,000, about 2,900 students. But you're seeing those flows for the, we went back to the 60s, right?
We did.
We all went back to the 60s.
Yeah,
And you can see the flow that every 30 years you have these spikes.
well, it makes sense, right? That's household formation is what drives.
Correct.
When you get turnover in housing and, new family comes to town and. That cycle takes a while,
And the pandemic is actually slowing that cycle down,
yeah.
right? So.
and interest rates too.
So where we were expecting these peaks according to our forecast, it's slowing that down because, of what happened with the pandemic and the housing market currently and interest rates going up. But it's interesting to just look at that historical data and see that, we think we can project that, your next spike will be around 2,900 hits.
Yeah.
But if you look at the last few years, right after COVID, we're stabilizing, which is what we've, predicted. And, we're gonna start seeing our enrollments in the next few years at the elementary level increase. But you're gonna see your enrollment continue to dip at the high school for the next few years.
I think it's worth noting just for a second, and that's, and I was the person who really asked Mike to put that in, because I just thought, when I looked at enrollment in the past, I just kind of always looked at, we went from 2,940 and now we're 2,500, and like we're down, 400 some people, students. But then if you look at the period from FY12 to FY16, that's 330 reduction in those 5 years. And then subsequent, everything there in blue is basically flat. The only abnormal year is the COVID year of 91. Absent that, it would have been an increase. So I just thought that was, I had not noticed that before. It just dipped in those 5 years, and then it's leveled off since then.
Yeah,
And again, if you look at the historical data, it's the same exact. The same exact.
Same thing.
What are the kind of average class size targets that you have for these categories?
And we try to, right now, our kindergarten, full day kindergarten has 22. And we try to keep everything in the low 20s at the elementary level. I mean, that would be our goal. It's hard to say the middle and high because of, the different structure up there. But again, we're trying to be in the high teens, low 20s at all times. There's definitely some classes that are 27, 28, and there's some that are 18, 19. It just, depends on the course and.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, and who's there.
Thank you.
So Ed wanted us to take one of our departments and just break it down even more. just to show, where the dollars are going. So, and then you put this spreadsheet together, but we'll talk about it. So we took the high school functions, so that, and we broke them down into, again, the categories that are reported to Destiny. So as you can see, you have supply services, textbooks, equipment, utilities, other expenses, which is very small. And then we break down the administration, unit A, unit B, and other, again, which is, administrative assistant and custodian.
Just that Deputy required us to do that. I know Michael mentioned that, but some of these don't seem to make sense why you group them together. But it's the way that Desi requires us to do that. So when Michael does the end of the year report and they do the per pupil expenditure and they calculate all that, it's all apples to apples to every district. So we're all required to organize it this way. It doesn't make sense, some of it, but that's the way they do it. They group things together that I wouldn't group together, but that's what they want us to do.
So like a few years ago, they took out technology, and part of technology now we have to report it as either student-based technology or a district-wide technology, and which made it a little bit difficult because at one point it was one number. So if you look at this and again, this is where I say, if you look at the percentage, you would say, okay, utilities are going up 23%, which it is, which is $87,000. But your biggest increase is your salaries, which is your 502,000, which is your unit A. And if you look at the percentage, it's only going up 6.4%. But that 6.4% equals 90% of your increase for that department. So that's why we say, the percentages could mean nothing when you're looking at a particular line item. You have to look at the department as a whole. And if you look at the department as a whole, you see what the dollar increase actually is. And then at the bottom, we broke down the FTEs. So your current FTEs for your high school right now are broken down into those categories that you see there, which equals 105.9. I call it 106 FTEs at the high school alone. But if we go and look at the teachers' FTEs, right? So currently our teacher FTE is projected at 61.6. And then, Ed and Steve said, well, can we look at the historical data of just the teachers and, and see, if that's gone up or down, according to the prior schedule that we showed from fiscal year 20 fiscal year, let's say 11. So that's what we did. So we went back to 2011 and we put in the student enrollment and we put in the FTEs for the category just teachers, okay? So in fiscal year 11, you had 937 kids at the high school and you had 61.1 teachers. Now, we're talking about classroom teachers, right? And we're not talking about specialists, or we're not talking about guidance counselors or adjustment counselors or special, we're talking about classroom teachers. And as you can see, as enrollment decreased, the number of teachers have decreased. So, right now we have 61.6 teachers, back in, 2011, we had 65.1. So, there's this, and Steve was talking about it, saying, people think that we're adding more teachers right into the budget. We're not adding teachers into the budget. As you can see, we're decreasing teachers. But what we're adding is where we need support, which is, our social emotional aspect of learning, right? That's where you're seeing the increase in staffing, right? Adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, psychologists. That's where you're seeing the increase, because after the pandemic, we saw more kids that needed more services in that category.
And we started before the pandemic, starting at those positions, but it was very apparent we needed more after that. So, we have the additional nurses in the support staff that our kids really need, our RISE program that we use at the high school, like that's 2 additional staff there. So all those programs that we felt that our kids needed the support, we implemented those, and they're not necessarily classroom teachers.
Can you just, I think, to speak to the management of that, okay? Because I appreciate the fact that numbers are going down, but proportionately, I know there's a lot of dynamics to go into that. It would be helpful because someone sees this chart, they could say, oh, wait a minute, we had 62 back in 2012 with the enrollment of 898. And we have 62
Sure.
enrollment of 714. So maybe you just give some,
Yeah, I mean, some of that is class offerings too, right? So we have additional AP classes and AP courses. We have at least 15 of those. If we're looking at different electives that are developed at interest areas, like we started a business program a couple of years ago that's taken off like crazy. So as those programs shift and change, you need additional staffing, or you don't need additional staff, you might reduce it, but a lot of that, the programming with the interests of the kids are really drives some of that, so that's why you might see a discrepancy with that. You look at the 220, you know, it was 59 and a half, I mean, that was in the middle of COVID, when we were doing remote teaching, and some folks just didn't come back. And we had teachers just didn't come back that year, it wasn't that we didn't need more people, because we did, we just didn't have people.
And actually, the peak of teachers was in 2007. 2017, when they had 67.5.
no, I'm just trying to get.
That was a high
it's
point.
helpful to have a
Yeah.
flavor
Sure.
for that, because you mentioned as you expand the offerings and the reception on that for the high school students and their parents, I mean, like I said.
Very positive. I mean, it's pretty comprehensive. You can pretty much, if you have an interest and there's a course in it, you can really dive deep into it. So it's really important for us to do that, especially business. That was an area that we were lacking. We looked at the data on our graduates and what they were doing when they got into school. It was a huge percentage of our kids go into business, yet we didn't have a business program in the high school. It made no sense. So now we've done that in 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. Added a DECA program, which is that entrepreneurial marketing program that our kids do. We have kids going to the nationals on that, you know, just really doing well with that. So I think we tried to really see what we're missing in terms of comprehensive high school and then add those programs. Some of it comes out of the R&D that we talked about earlier with professional development. The teacher might say, we're looking at designing a course that does X, Y, and Z. Can we do it during that time? If we approve that in the summer, they develop it, and that's a whole other section that they'll be teaching. So it's been positively received, and our kids have a lot of options.
Thank you.
And Bob, the other thing I want to say is, you know, if we only have 3 kids that signed up for a course, we're not gonna run that course. The students have the option to do it an online course.
Yeah, so we have
They get
virtual high
credit
school. We'll do that. So virtual high school costs us $9,000 a year. So if we have a situation, as Michael just described, where someone wants to take AP economics or something that we're not offering at that particular semester, they can do it online, and we already have purchased 50 spots for that. So we'll be able to do it that way too, which is a great cost savings.
All right, thank you.
So then we also looked at our revolving accounts, and these are those accounts that where we have our FTEs that are not supported by the operational budget. Circuit breaker, again, that's a reimbursement from the state for special educational services, and it's a formula. So I think next year, right, it's going up by 14%. Which is, I think, was $48,700. So any student cost over 48,700, the state will reimburse us 75% of any overage over there. Okay, so they look at, so if we have a student that's, let's say, you know, 60,000, they take the difference between the 16 to 47,800, and then they give us 75% of that difference. And that's how that circuit breaker works. And then we take that cost, right, and we built it within our operational, saying, okay, you know, we take whatever the budget is, we subtract out what we feel that we're gonna receive next year, again, through the formula. We're projecting next year that we're gonna receive 773,488. We subtract that off of our operational, and then those costs get charged to the revolving account. The receipts for circuit breaker are a year behind. So it's the data from this year is what we will receive next year. So it's not year to year, they're always gonna be a year behind when reimbursing us for students.
Which is the issue for those districts with a 14% increase. So it does nothing for them this year. They still gotta figure the 14% out, but they'll get reimbursement for it next year. So we heard whispers on Friday that there's gonna be a supplemental budget that's gonna offset some of this 14% for districts and hold them harmless. So we'll be waiting to see if that takes place, but whether that comes out through the mechanism of Chapter 70 or if it comes out through circuit breaker, we don't know yet.
And by state law, we can carry forward 1 year's worth of circuit breaker. And as you can see, our circuit breaker number, it went down, and the reason why it went down was because I believe it was a year ago where we had to cut our budget and we cut it through circuit breaker. So we took circuit breaker funding to offset the operational budget, which is not ideal because you always do want to carry forward at least a year's worth of circuit breaker because you're a year behind.
That's a good point, because one of the things when you're looking at circuit breaker, you have a tendency to look at the bottom line and say, oh my goodness, you're gonna have $384,000 and we've got a budget deficit, might as well just take $100,000 here. Well, when you're looking at circuit breakers, you gotta take a look at them over a span of time. That's why we develop these schedules. You gotta look back to see what happens. You gotta project forward and see where you stand. This balance of 384, I'm glad it's going back up. But to the extent that we're lucky and we get additional circuit breaker funds, we need to put it in here because the cost of a child going out that's not in the budget could cost you $150,000 just like that. And the reason the state wants you to keep a year is, I'm glad they do that, a year, is because you can have those big surprises mid-year. And this one, I mean, we're gonna receive what, 900,000, we're at 384. It was $500,000 less than what the state would suggest we have. So when you're looking at circuit breaker on any one of the revolvers, you look at that bottom line and your tendency to say is, okay, we have that much money to spend. You don't, you have to look forward and say, what's coming down the pike? You'll see that when we get into some of the other.
And it's gotta
revolvers.
be incredibly difficult to forecast this, because you don't know
You don't
who's
know.
gonna
It is
move
hard
into
to-
town and what type of.
There are kids who, in September or October, the special ed director will say, well, this child is on the bubble. We'll know by December or after the first semester, whether we need to put this person in a placement starting in January. Well, you may have captured that in the budget, but you don't know that all the
Right.
time.
Right.
And so you might have that surprise in the second half of the year, or half the year's cost.
So you might have a movement.
And you might have a movement. So it's, you gotta be very sensitive when you're looking at revolvers.
Yeah.
So this might be a good time just to, just talk a little bit about something that could come up in the next couple of months. So, as I told you that there's supplemental budget whispers, there's also whispers of chapter 70 going up $100 per student. For districts like ours that are hold harmless districts that only got the $30 per student in this initial governor's budget. So if that does happen, and there'll be, that would be an additional 150,000 or so going to the town. Remember that chapter 70 goes to the town, it doesn't go directly to the schools. It'll be after town meeting, so everything will be allocated, budgets will be set, there'll be additional money put in there. So that's an issue that lots of districts have to deal with and towns have to deal with. So one of the things that can't happen this year, but one of the things I'd love to talk about maybe in the fall or late spring or in the fall is establishing a special education stabilization account with the town. So this is brand new. It's like 3 or 4 years old. It was the efficiency bill that Governor Baker had done when he was in office. And it allows districts to put money away for what Ed was just describing, some of those surprises you might get. And the school committee can't just authorize the spending of it. It's the school committee and the board of selectmen together that authorize the spending of it. So both, the town and the school have to approve it before it gets spent. But I think it's something we should think about, because I think it would put us in a really good spot going forward, that any additional money, whether it's the money that we generate for Medicare that goes to the town, or any additional chapter 70 that might come after the budget settled, a percentage or all of that could go into this stabilization account and then just protect the school district and the town for the future. So not anything I'm asking for tonight, but just something I think we should think about maybe in the fall.
Yeah.
And maybe get in there for FY25.
And we did that in my old district where.
It sounds logical. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we did it in my old district. I don't know if they did it in Mansfield.
No, it didn't.
So any chapter 7 that came in that was above and beyond what was budgeted went into this account.
Yeah.
We put it back into the revolver. It's kind of belts and suspenders, but not a bad thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next one is preschool and kindergarten revolving account. So I'm going to focus on 2024. You're going to see that our revenue will be increasing from 623 to 675. And that's because we took in consideration additional preschool classrooms, which would be 8 students. That revenue was built into that receipt line, but we also built into our expense line, which is our payroll line, an additional teacher and 2 aides. So our expenses are going up from 679 to 786. Our revenue is going up from 623 to 675. And as you can see, and as we forecast, if our revenue receipts stay the way they are, and expenses continue to go up 2.5%, the increase that is in this revolving account, it will be continuing to decrease. There is talk that we want to build this account up because they are, talking about preschool, right? Free preschool and free full-day kindergarten. And if that is the situation as we move forward, we should be building this revolving account up to offset the cost in the future when, if this mandate comes in, that we have to provide full-day kindergarten at no cost and full-day preschool at no cost.
Yeah, if you didn't have anything, that'd be a huge hit.
They were huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It would be an override type hit.
Oh, no doubt.
No doubt.
Are you saying that it's your expectation that if it comes down, it'll be an unfunded mandate?
It will be not
There's a lot of, you can add that to a list of unfunded mandates, we got them all the time. I mean, it might not be, if they might, you might get it in chapter 70 instead, so they might say that, okay, now, because when you do chapter 70 right now, each kindergarten student is counted as half a child, because you only mandated to have half. So they might bump that up to a whole, so you get additional chapter 70 money, I mean, that might be the way they do it, but I can't really count on that.
Then again, the chapter 70 goes to the town.
Correct.
The school still has to pay for the kindergarten, so that's why it's my smart, and just trying to keep this balance as high as we can to mitigate that, because it's gonna happen at some point.
It will.
And this will offset some of the cost.
I mean, I would say there aren't many left that are going tuition based full. I mean, there's a lot that have gone out of that now. We're probably one of, I won't say the number because we hope it, but whatever that number might be, there's very few left in that area that do this. So, it's a decision the community needs to make because it is override type money that you're gonna have to do this. But and just a word about that additional preschool. And Michael was talking about the 8 students. So there's 15 students in the program that will be in that WheeLock class. 8 of them will be tuition paying students. So that's why he factored that in, but the educational piece would be 15 kids, not just 8 kids.
And the question was, what, can we start planning for that today, not knowing what the enrollment is? We do know because we have a waiting list. So because we have a waiting list, we know we can add another classroom.
Right.
Space is our issue now. If we didn't have space concerns, we'd have a lot more preschool classes. You can easily do it.
So food service, food service in the last few years has been a healthy balance, as you can see. And the reason behind that is because this is the 3rd year of the free and reduced. So every child in every school district across the nation is free lunches. And that has helped us because every student that participates in the program, we get reimbursed for. So, when we're bringing, back in 2018, we were bringing in 700,000. Now we're getting we got an extra $1 million last year because every student was participating in the lunch program that we could reimburse for. Fiscal year 23, we're saying, again, we're going to get that $1 million. It could be higher. Right now, we're projecting about $1 million. And fiscal year 24, we projected it go back to about 740,000, which was before the pandemic days. There is a bill right now that they're considering extending the program for another year.
I think they're going to.
That was in that MMA, yeah.
But we don't, again, we
State.
don't count on it, right, at this point, because we don't have,
Right.
100% confidence that it's gonna happen. If that happens, which we had the discussion with Steve and Ed, we're gonna stop planning to stop replacing major equipment in those kitchens that are out there. So instead of bringing that capital to the town side, we will offset those costs through the program.
This was a fortuitous
It was.
event for us because typically, when you look at the balances in the down there, 157, 108, down at how low is 15,000. Well, these revolving accounts, you're supposed to run the business so that you can replace your equipment, and this is an individual business. And it's a $1 million business, and so you have to have enough money put aside, it's like in a corporation, to replace your assets over time. We would never have been able to do this without this windfall, and that's not just Medfield, that's everybody's benefiting from this, so this is a wonderful benefit, not only for the students who get the lunch, but for all of the school districts across the country who can build this account up so they can replace their equipment, so this is a nice story.
Athletics, as you can see, it's pretty steady. Obviously, we had a dip into 2020, 2021 because of the pandemic. We had to cancel certain seasons, which meant less revenue. Last year, that number went back up to 336. We're projecting 330 and 330 next year because the high school enrollment is going down. So as enrollment is going to go down, obviously participation is going to be lower. But we're still, projecting about 330,000 in receipts. And we offset our expenses according to what we get for our receipts. We like to have a balance in there because stuff does occur, such as the baseball field. We had an emergency fix that we had to do because it wasn't playable. So little things like that. That's why we like to have a small balance in there, so we don't have to go back to the town and pay out of that account.
But I'm the baseball field.
The turf around home plate, first base, second base, and third base wore out, and there was a huge hole where kids were sliding in a second, and then right-handed hitters, because the right-handed hitters can't hit, unlike the left-handed hitter. The right-handed hitters had, their back foot had made a hole right next to home plate, so we had to replace all that turf, so.
They're wearing cleats because the outfield is great.
Right, so that you can't, typically you have a turf field, you have kids not wearing metal cleats, but because half the field is grass and half the field is turf, kids have to wear metal
Usually
cleats.
Texas.
So the next field will need to be all grass. You got that right, you got that right.
And Norton just did it. They
It's gonna be one or the other.
was it baseball or softball that they redid?
You know, I don't know.
And they made it,
Football is unbelievable.
and they made it into an all-purpose field, so they lined it with soccer, lacrosse, and
Medway did that too.
and they also can use it for either softball or baseball.
Yeah.
And then this is the extra grant. This is just a quick summary that, Jeff explained earlier, the assistant AD left in the fall, so we're gonna have savings in that line item, which is about 13,465, which will decrease the math teacher's retirement that we have to contribute by almost $2,000. The late bus, because we didn't run 2 late buses this year, we only ran 1. So there's gonna be a savings of 44,301 in there. And then there was a small savings in HVAC of about 2,100. Dibbles is a program that we run, and there's a savings of 2,400. So we're gonna carry over from ESSER grant 63,190 next year. So, one of the things that we spoke about is that we're gonna decrease our operational by that amount. So the number that you saw tonight is gonna be decreased by 63,000. And then we have identified other areas of where we're gonna look at to decrease our budget. Because I believe, there's a number that we received earlier today that we have to get to. So that's what we're working on earlier today. We're gonna continue to work on tomorrow. So we have a proposal in front of the school committee by Thursday.
And again, for we ignoramuses, SH stands for.
Oh,
Elementary.
I apologize.
Whatever language it is, we don't
I
know.
can't remember, but it's the last.
It was the last, we had 3 ESSERs and this is the last one for COVID. The last one. So we just always want to end by thanking everyone in the community because they've always been so supportive of our district and our kids, and I want to recognize on the right-hand side, you see our girls hockey team who were recognized by the MIAA on Sunday at the Boston Garden for a sportsmanship award for having outstanding sportsmanship in women's and girls hockey. So we're really proud of them. And again, just always want to thank the citizens. We know it's a heavy lift and we appreciate it.
You want me to bring up the schedules?
Yeah, there's a couple extra schedules that we we added to the presentation. That
Yeah.
Ed, maybe you can walk through that one. Yeah, this one, and this is tough to see.
Does everybody having, I have a copy there if you want a handout. It's-
I'll take one, and then we could.
We'll just pass it around.
We actually did this schedule last year as well. It's kind of just a different cut on just the expenses. Yeah.
These are non-payroll.
Yeah, these are the non-payroll. This is the, if payroll is 83%, this is the other 17% of the total expenses across the district. So it's the non-payroll expenses, and I thought it just made sense to take some of the major categories and break it out a little bit so you can see where that, if you look at the total of the expenses going up 241,000, 3.7%. That's towards the bottom, but you can see all of the fluctuations. So if you just take the top grouping is special ed. You can see in that very top line, private schools, it's going down 194,000. Jeff,
I don't think they might share.
Yeah, can you share that on Zoom? Or Frank, can
It
you?
says something share.
It's not, it's not, I got it here.
Mather, they printed it out. It was one of the attachments, I think, at one point. So they may have it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we have people who,
Yeah, I gotta, for other people.
other people watching.
Oh, okay.
They want to see it.
There you go.
There you go, thanks.
Thanks.
So if you look at that very top line, tuition, private schools, you can see it's going down 194,000. Jeff mentioned that it's because that's a combination of a 14% increase that was awarded, that was allowed by the state or the agency that dictates that, offset by the student that aged out and a student that moved. So three different factors there, one up and two down, that result in the savings of 194,000 just on that line item. The circuit breaker offset, we've talked about that. And you can see over the history how much we've used, starting back in 2020 with 512,000, and now up to, in this proposed budget for 24, 773,000. Now, then you got to keep in mind what we just talked about when we looked at the circuit breaker account, because we don't want to continue using that much money every single year. We want to try to build that account up. So this is something that we always have to look at every single year and strike that balance as to how much we should be using to offset private school tuitions. So then you can see the cost of the collaboratives, the special ed transportation, and if you look at that subtotal, the subtotal for special education for the first time since this schedule began, maybe it's not the first time, but it's down 122,000, 8.9%. And out to the far right-hand side, you can see that percentage of 18.6. That's just the 18, it's 18% of the total expenses, non-payroll expenses. And so we can just go through then we have tuitions for the mass schools going up 16%, 29,000. The transportation line, that's the regular transportation. It's going to cost us $1,573,000. For how many buses do we have? 20 for 20 buses, up 7.2%. That's a combination of the contractual increase, which is usually around 4%, plus the gas escalator, which is anybody's guess, but it's an estimate in there, I think roughly $60,000-$70,000 on that. So that's up, that's 23% of your total non-payroll expenses. 23% is just in your transportation. Then we broke out facilities into its component parts, according to my mind: electricity, heat, water and sewer, telephone, and some maintenance contracts. And if you look at the grand total there, it's up 12%, up $159,000. The largest number of which, of course, is electricity, which is a 20% increase. And because the schools are in on a town contract, we have a contract through December, January through June. We have to plan for the increase that the electric companies are telling us we're going to get, which is about 38%. I think they've always quoted. So we got a 20%.
We had a great deal.
Yeah.
Thanks to Mr. Walker and Jessica here.
That's right.
But time's run out, right?
So it's time to enter into your next great deal.
We're trying.
The classrooms, you can see that in the next book. I said, well, you know, what's it actually cost to run the class every day? That's your textbooks and this tech software and your supplies. And that's only up 25,000 on a 3.2%. The technology, I broke that down into several areas that I picked out of the budget, the net of which is going up 43,000, 4.5%. And then I backed into the all other going up only $1,200. So you can see in total, the non-payroll expenses are up 241,000, 3.7%. And because I'm an accountant at the very bottom of the schedule, you can see I had to tie it back to the original numbers.
I love you. I love you, Ed. This might be a good, maybe this is a good segue to talk about technology. You know, that's one budget that sort of combines a town budget with the school budget, right? And I know Owen's here, so I don't know if you want to segue into that real briefly, or do you still got, do you want to keep continuing on this?
I'm done with it. We would segue into that. This would be perfect time.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna keep this on.
Yeah, keep this up, and then the town budget is, you probably know, another, I think it's another 250,000 or something like that.
Well, the town is. Yeah, 236.
236, yeah. So maybe you could just educate the group on what's involved in this budget and how you oversee it and the changes in it that you.
So probably the biggest changes within the whole world of technology for us on both sides of the equation is cybersecurity. That's our biggest, probably growing expense year on year. That cost is going up. The insurance rates are going up. What we have to do to ensure that we get coverage, those conditions keep increasing and getting stricter and stricter year on year. So to that end, that's probably one of the common drivers across both school and town. When we look at the budget here, just on the town side, let's say, for example, there's 85,000 in maintenance contracts. That obviously incorporates our phone systems, which is a big vulnerability for most organizations nowadays. Think about if your phone system goes down, if it's been compromised, if you have a cyber incident with your phone system, you can't perform business, you're out of luck. We'll also cover like our email system, our file storage system, which is all based on Google. So that's kind of a set cost. That's typically, it's a set cost per month per employee. And the downside to that is even once an employee leaves, we have to continue paying that set cost for 7 years. Because we have to retain all our employees' emails and digital records for 7 years. So on the town side, we have that set cost. The school side, it's a different approach because they treat education differently. I had tried to get the town as an umbrella to the school system to save the town money, but I think they've met people like me once too often. It was worth an attempt anyway.
The question I had is the computer replacement.
Yep.
Is there another budget in the capital budget for computers?
There is. So what we've done is we received 30,000, I believe it was last year, in capital funding for computer replacement. What we did was we didn't spend that money because the cost of computers were through the roof. So what we're hoping to do is make those purchases this year.
Yeah.
Just because of the demand that occurred during COVID. A device which would cost, let's say, $700 or $800 is now costing $1,300, $1,400, $1,500. And I just didn't feel comfortable spending that amount per desktop computer.
Yeah.
When the majority of our work nowadays is web-based.
Yeah.
And you don't really need the local resources on a desktop for people that are just using the device to access the internet and internet-based programs. So we are sitting on some money there, but our plan is to draw that down before the end of this fiscal year Again, subject to the prices of devices coming down, which they have started to come down.
Yeah.
But that was just.
And how does, it's been a while since the kids have been in schools, but is there a technology fee now that?
No.
No, we don't have that.
Um,
Do we provide the computers
We do.
to all the kids? Okay.
Except at the high school, there the students have the option to bring in their own devices, but we have devices for them, so.
Yeah.
From the school ends, again, it's tied into curriculum and
Mhm.
the best approach to learning, but on the school side, we try and go with a standard-based. Or standard device, which is common throughout all students in the classroom. It's not as necessary in the high school level, but certainly at the elementary levels and up to middle school, it is necessary.
So here's an example of an unfunded mandate. We had to move our MCAS to all computer-based, and we didn't get money from the state to get computers. So we went from paper and pencil to completely on the computer. Figure it out. You got a couple of years to figure it out. And that's, that's another reason why we need the devices as well,
Yeah,
because all the grades take MCAS, it's all computerized.
So we'll typically have like 2 schools test at a time, which is quite a strain on the tech department for MCAS. So you have an entire grade in one building doing their MCAS, 200 students, 180 students. And the second building, you have the same volume testing, so makes things more efficient when it works well. But it's just, technology isn't going away in any of our lives, or
Right.
anything that we do in our day-to-day jobs, it's only increasing. And that's where, to be honest, a lot of the stress comes in with the cyber security piece of things, because we've already experienced 2 cyber incidents on the downside. One on the town side and one on the school side, and they are crippling when they occur. They are.
what was the last one?
Last year on the school side,
Yeah.
that took quite an amount of time to get to the bottom of.
Yeah.
There wasn't any loss of data. There's different protocols that we have to follow if there is such a breach, but just in terms of, if you take a very simple thing like an interruption in internet service to a building.
Yeah.
The complexities that causes in terms of interfering with phones, interfering with online learning, interfering with emails, and everything, retrieval of documents. So like before, the lens was if there was a cyber incident, it was a tech problem. Now people are kind of come to the realization that it's an organizational problem. It's not just the technology department that has to figure it out. It's everyone's ability to work and work efficiently is impacted.
So, Steve, I just want to add that no student devices are purchased through the capital. They're all purchased through the operation.
Through this budget, okay. Okay,
And then the capital funding on the school, basically for the school settings, funds things like projectors in classrooms,
yeah,
access points, network switches, all the kind of nuts and bolts that go on behind the scenes.
okay. Okay, any other questions for either Owen or Mike or? Oh, there is one last,
Looks like we'll go that way.
yeah, why don't we, I'll try to talk to this, I guess. This is there's a lot of numbers on this, but this was really an attempt by me to sort of benchmark, Medfield with some other towns. And what you see here is there's 3 colors on the slide. There's the rose color, which are communities with where their commercial levy is above 25%. The blue is 10 to 20% commercial levy. And then the orange is below 10%. So you can see Medfield and, we're at 5.59% commercial levy. And you can see, that I tried to just pick communities with similar populations, similar income per capita, similar parcels, of homes. The tax bill is there, and the ranking of a town in their tax bill. So Medfield has a high tax bill compared to other communities, but that's a function of a low commercial levy. So we're ranked at number 18. And then the operating budgets are all listed out there. And the per pupil cost, so Mike helped me get this information from the DESI database. So it's basically a function of the enrollment and the education budget for those towns. So I'm not sure there's a lot to glean from this, other than I think I think Medfield is, you could say, is probably not an outlier. We're sort of we're kind of average here around we're below average with all the communities on here, but if you look within our subset here, we're kind of, sitting, there's some communities that are above us, 3 that are above and 1 below us. So, always, similar student enrollments. But you can see there's, and then there's one, Sudbury is a regional district, so the budget numbers look a little off because of that. But anyway, it is what it is. It's I don't know, Ed, do you have any comments?
No,
on
it's
this?
just, I kept looking at this and I go to one column, I go to another column, and I try to say, yeah, it's very hard to draw a straight comparison because there's only,
Yeah.
because that whole residential commercial breakout is.
Makes a huge difference.
It's huge.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the difference.
I mean, you look at Westwood, which is,
Westwood, yeah.
they're up to 25% commercial.
Right,
They have a budget of 103 million.
right.
We're 30 million less.
With 400
So they got a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, amazing.
So
It's
They
really.
just got another 1.1 million to chop in.
I was gonna come back to that.
They don't even know why. I asked them, they don't know why.
Say that again, please, I missed that.
The 1.1 million that they got an extra chapter 70.
Chapter
Oh,
70, man.
they
They
can't
got an
say-
extra
They
million.
can't
We got
say-
7,000.
70,000 and they got
72.
1.1 million.
It's been raised to our
It
representative,
has.
Denise Garlic.
This is one of those schedules I said to you last week. There's some schedules that answer questions, there are other schedules that make you ask them more
Mhm.
questions.
Right.
And this is one.
Yeah, this is one of them,
This
yeah.
is one of them.
Yeah, it may just be that it's hard to do comparisons, that's all, but, I think there are some communities that we probably should not compare ourselves to, like a Sherburne or, a Dover or something like that, where there's small communities compared to us, so.
No, I mean, I have no bone to pick with Westwood. I have friends in Westwood, but it's.
I have relatives.
Okay, but it's just, I don't think of their needs as being vastly greater than ours, it's just perplexing.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
It's a great schedule.
are there any more questions for this group here? It was good, that was very, very comprehensive, appreciate you taking us through that. I think we also, as everybody knows, we're not done with a balanced budget this year, so we did go back to Jeff and Mike and ask, if they could take another look, because we can't solve the problem without the school department, so. So we're hopeful that, they'll consider that ask and come back with something that's reasonable, so.
That's what I was just asking Michelle, and the target is going from 41,472 to 41,286, is it? Like your proposed finalized. 41,286.
You have that spreadsheet.
I was taking the 41,286 target and then just took the other number off what you just done.
So the 41,286 is the we got the revised, so the updated budget, which reflected the ESSER. 63,000 plus the sabbatical, the person who's taking sabbatical. That was 100, so that came up to 173. So the additional ask for the school is 123. That's the additional ask, yeah. Yeah,
So in the handout that we got from the town, that includes the 170.
that includes the 170. So it's off by 123 now. That's the additional. And we've gone to, just so you know, we've gone to the town and asked, and they've come up with, reductions. So a similar percentage wise, so. I did have one question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but in the area of special ed, I'm just curious, like, what percentage of the school's budget is dedicated to special ed? Do you know the answer to that? 20?
So it's, you have to take, you have to break it down by salary, right? So you pick up and put in administrative salaries, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, right? And then you add in the tuitions, you add back the circuit breaker.
Yeah.
So we're looking at.
$142.
Yep. And you add, if you add in the 1/4, we're slightly higher than the 20%.
Right.
So it's north of 20 then, okay.
And that doesn't
It's a lot.
include, it would be an allocation, like the cost of IEPs, which I call special ed prevention. So that's a cost that we incur to help students who need it, that aren't specifically in special ed, they're there to help the students, but it's to help them stay in the regular ed class. Correct. It's like special ed prevention, who knows what that is, but it's a cost it's in there.
Yeah.
Those are your reading coaches and math coaches.
Right.
They fall under your regular educational service.
Okay, no, that's helpful. We did get a question online from Chris Potts. Can you just clarify the state high-low rank? What does that represent? So that is that's literally just an average tax bill in a ranking of every community of 350 communities. So we're ranked number 18, which means there's 17 other communities higher than us. We've always been around, I think that 18 moved up in the last fiscal year. That's a fiscal 21 number, but I think it's gone up to 20 now. So, but at one point, after we passed in 2018, after we went on a spending spree and approved all these overrides, we took a trip up to number 15.
15 highest in the
15th highest in the state, and it's slowly come down now to 20. So, all right, so that's that question. Well, unless there's any other questions, so the plan will be for you guys to consider our ask.
Yeah, so
on
we're gonna put
Thursday.
together some menu of options and recommendations we would make.
Yeah.
To the school committee for Thursday night, and
Okay.
then we'll see where they take it.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Good job. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good night.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work by you Having Brett on that, thank you.
Ed did all the heavy lifting. He's the pro. He used to do what Mike did.
Oh.
He
What's
knows
Mike's last name, by the way?
La Francesca.
Francesca.
Yeah. There's nobody better to look at this than Ed, that's for sure. All right. Well, back to the agenda here. So we got through schools and IT. Do we want to do, what time is it? Look at the time here. 8 o'clock. Okay, we got
Just about.
a little more. Mather, were you prepared to do facilities tonight or?
I'm not, no, we still haven't had an opportunity to meet with Christine and Mike to go over that.
Okay. I just happened to see Amy there, so I don't know if you can, sounds like unless you need her for something else, she could probably
And you can drop off.
drop off. You can drop off Amy, because we're not gonna do facilities tonight, but. I guess that leaves us with health insurance. Oh, before we get to that, before we get to the other departments, well, we have time, so we'll go. So we have we have the health insurance. We're not gonna do Park and Rec tonight. That'll be moved to the April 3rd. So we've got health insurance and then probably insurance and HR and town administrator. We probably could go through those in the time we have, I'm sure. Yeah.
Wow, the screen here.
Maybe we could watch you have it.
Maybe.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Which one do you want to do first? Health insurance. Did everybody get this? Is a handout. We didn't send it out ahead of time, so it's a handout tonight.
There's the health insurance budget.
Health insurance budget, yes. This will take some explaining, so I'm gonna let Frank and Christine tell us about this.
Okay, so I'll take us off with health insurance. The total budget request for this year is just about 4.9 million, $4,928,810. This budget item covers both active and retirees, or actually say active employees and retirees. You can see in the table that sort of midway down the page in the health insurance summary that I distributed prior to the meeting, the bulk of our headcount that's on our health insurance plans is through our retirees. Most of those retirees, and we'll cover this in a minute, who receive their health insurance with the federal government. They're required to join Medicare, but there is an additional plan that additional coverage plan that they sign on that the town does fund. You can see also the split out between school and the other municipal or town departments. 462 total headcount on the school side, and then on the town side, 142. Of the non-retiree, most of the active employees and some of the current retirees, all of their health plans are covered through Maya and Cross Blue Shield. Once a retiree turns 65, then they're forced onto the Medicare plans. So if they retire before 65, before that, they can still opt into the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. So for active employees, you have a choice of 3 plans: the Blue Care Elect, Access Blue, Blue Saver, which is the high deductible plan, and the HMO Blue Value Plus. And then you can see the individual splits of what the town share of those costs are, and what the employee fares are. For the retirees, as I just mentioned, until you're 65, you have a choice of 2 plans. You can't be on the high deductible plan, otherwise you have access to the same healthcare plans that active employees have until you turn 65, and then you're forced on to the Medicare. Any questions about sort of like the specifics or logistics of how the plan works for the town?
I'll just ask this, you probably don't have even any way of knowing, but does the town have at all benefit from one person works for the town and their spouse works for State Street or Fidelity, and they prefer to be on the State Street health plan, and therefore that's a savings to us?
So I can tell you firsthand, I am not on the town's plan. I am on my wife's plan. She, so there, you have the choice when you start employment, or at least I did. You know, you have access to a different plan. You can choose which plan you could have been on. I could have been on this one. My wife could have stayed on hers. My wife could have joined the town's plan. So yes, we would save if an employee opted to join their spouse's plan or another plan that they have access to.
I'm looking at the schools, we said there was like 432 FTEs on the schools and 201 that looks like are enrolled. So it's a little less than 50% of the FTEs in the schools on the health plans. So they're using their spouses.
And to that point, it would only, the head count that we get billed by Maya only includes the employee. It wouldn't count, the spouse and however many children that would be on the plan. We would just, get billed for one family plan.
Right.
So the budget proposal before you assumed a 12-month billing period. In the past 2 years, I believe the town's received at least one. Last year, I believe it was 1 month premium holiday, and the year before that, I want to say it was a half a month premium holiday. Obviously, you don't budget for things like that. You just sort of cross your fingers and hope that they happen.
Yeah, they kind of raised havoc with our budgeting.
Yeah, so
They did.
12 months,
They
11
were much
months, 10 months.
appreciated.
So we're back on a 12-month plan now, right? Okay.
So after a couple of years of, I guess, increases that were on the lower end of the spectrum this year, Maya let us know probably 4 to 6 weeks ago that these costs for premiums this year would be 8.7%. Not great. There was an attempt to, and I don't know if you want to speak to this.
Yeah, So just so you're all aware, and I know we have some new members, is that health insurance is a mandatory subject of collective bargaining. And obviously, Dr. Marsden talked to you tonight about the school unions and the unions he has on his side. On the town side, we have the fire union and the police union. So we were concerned when we were notified by Maya that it was going to be an 8.7% increase. And I know we talked about this briefly with all of you. I was concerned not only for the increase to the town side budget, but that our employees were facing this with everything else going on in the world. An 8.7% increase I thought was incredibly high for us to do for our employees. So we convened a meeting of the Insurance Advisory Committee, which is a group put together that has representatives from all of the unions on it. It's an informal group. It's not appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Has a member of every union and a non-union member from as well. And we asked them to make a voluntary change to the plan design. They did a lot of work. We had some lunch and learns. I know the unions represented on the school side. Unfortunately, in order for a voluntary change to the plan design, you would need every union in the town to agree on a voluntary basis to accept that. We don't have the formal Section 18 language. We don't have a formal PEC. And unfortunately, that did not pass. Several of the unions said they were fine continuing with the 8.7% increase. So we, at this point, have to move forward with that, and we'll have to make some serious changes and reflect on what we'll do going forward for next year, because obviously, when you're talking, this is one of the biggest drivers of our budget at close to $5 million. It's something we have to take a serious look at next year and how we'll manage that.
So
I'm not sure I'll phrase this question diplomatically enough, but isn't that contrary to their own forget the town's financial interest? Isn't that contrary to their own members' financial interests?
I can't vote, I don't know, I can't report on the vote, I wasn't there on how it was presented. I know the plan design, would have offered up a 2.7% increase, in the monthly premium, in the premium, and then it would have offered a small deductible, but it was not a high deductible for anybody who's familiar with a high deductible plan. It was a deductible that would have been on only certain services that were offered with the plan. So we were pleased that Blue Cross Blue Shield put something together so quickly and was able to do that overall increase down to the 2.7%. But I haven't had any feedback from the members. I know they are meeting this week, Insurance Advisory Committee, so maybe I'll get some more feedback. I would assume that people just didn't like that the design was changing, without some discussion with the unions directly. So.
Mike,
I mean, but I'm with you. I mean, it seems to me that this would save them money. Obviously, your premiums are going, because they pay, what, 38% of it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
so the incremental cost between 2.7 and 8.7 is X amount of dollars. Does
Well, I
that
exceeded the deductible.
exceed the deductible?
Yes, it would even
So-
if you hit the maximum deductible,
Yeah.
it's $250 a person, $750 for a family. So even if you
Yeah.
had a family of
That's what's
four, and
weird
it was
about the whole thing.
$750,
Yeah.
the savings from the 8.7 and 2.7 far exceeded the $750 deductible.
now
They're
there's,
shooting themselves in the foot.
I
Because they don't.
I can't speak to why they.
Yeah.
now there was only, the one, I think our biggest union voted for this, the teachers.
Right, the teachers did, yeah.
But there were other, there are other unions that didn't, so.
Yeah, and I assume the Insurance Advisory Committee, I think they're meeting later this week or early next week, they'll provide a report of, who was in favor of it and who wasn't, so. But we'll have to look at the structure for next year.
Yeah, it seems common sense is going out the window.
Common sense isn't-
Not diplomatic enough, but thank you, Steve. You take it.
Well, I'm just a resident, right? I can say those things.
So given that information, we were notified last week that it was not going to pass all the unions. Frank has taken a really deep dive into the health insurance to see where we could get any savings and shave some of those costs off for us. So we relooked at what we were anticipating for retiree health insurance, and we were able to reduce the budget that way as well.
Yeah, so why don't you explain that? Sure. That, because we did manage to get some reductions out of this budget.
Yeah, it looks like it's
For
We
retirement.
took about 175,000.
Yeah, 175, so, and that, basically, they have the flexibility to deal with that group separately, right?
the group that's in the medics here,
Yeah,
so
so,
the 3.7% only applies to the Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, everything that we have for active employees and then some of the retirees. The bulk of our headcount, as that graph shows, are retirees, and the bulk of that bulk are over 65, so they're in that medics. The medics plan, the rates are set each year, each calendar year by the federal government. The past 2 years, there's been a 0% increase. I don't think anyone here could tell the truth and say, oh, there surely will be another 0% increase in year. So based on previous years' increases, we're budgeting for a 6% increase. And since that would only apply to half the fiscal year, the increase would start in January. We're going to budget for half that, 3%. So that's how we were able to, I think, responsibly achieve those savings.
yeah, Frank did a lot of analysis
Yeah.
on this. He went back. How many, I don't know, we went
Many
back
years.
many years to try to get some data. To come up with a good estimate, so got a big spreadsheet.
Good times.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions on the health insurance? Okay. We can get to the easy one, huh? What do you want to do next? You could do,
This is one of the first.
Insurance? yeah. So that's That's a 366. Is that the budget? Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
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 We actually covered the second piece of it, the public safety was the.
Yeah. Right.
That was the 111.
We did that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like 279.
279, right.
So there's been an increase over the last 5 years, and that is, Maya is moving towards a change in how they do their valuations. So you are now insured and are paying for the true valuation of your buildings. So for example, we had the wastewater treatment plant had been valued at close to $1 million. We were paying our insurance policy on $1 million. If that had to be replaced, we all know that's in excess of $15 million. So our insurance values are now going to be replaced on the actual replacement value of that, which is fair. And they have spread that over the past 5 years for us. So we knew as certain buildings would be revalued that would come up. This year happens to be the wastewater treatment plant, so that's why that number's on the top of my head. I've also been working with the Board of Selectmen, and that is one of our fixed cost reductions that we were proposing. We worked with our insurance company to go from a $1,000 deductible to a $5,000 deductible. They provided an analysis for us that said if we had changed that 5 years ago, I'm sorry, actually 7 years ago. If we changed it 7 years ago, even though we did have some failures, such as the school roofs, we had a failure of the roof at the Park and Rec. 7 years ago, we would have seen an $80,000 savings within our premium costs. So we're moving to $5,000 deductible, which is also in line more with several of the other municipal departments rather than that.
And if one doesn't pay that $5,000 deductible, that's something you can take from free cash.
So we actually maintain a municipal building insurance trust fund. And so our proposal when working on the finance team is that if we experienced a loss such as that and we did the $5,000 deductible, we could pull it from the municipal building insurance trust.
Okay, seems pretty straightforward. All right, HR, yeah.
So the HR budget includes the salaries. We do a share with the school department for our HR director, who's Kathy, who is just absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough about her. She keeps us on the straight and narrow on a daily basis. This reflects the salary in here for her. And it also includes the 3% merit and the 3% COLA. And 3% merit is for department heads and managerial positions, and the 3% COLA is for all non-union employees. And we put it in here in this budget so that you can see the total cost of what that 3% is. And also for Andrew's case, once everybody has voted and we're moving forward with the 3%, then Andrew will take that number and divide it amongst the individual budgets. So you will see that in the individual budgets, but you try to save everybody a little bit of work in doing that ahead of time. If there was a change, it saves Andrew from having to.
And the selectmen are gonna vote on this tomorrow?
They're gonna vote on tomorrow. The personnel board, I had been working with them, with the chair a lot when I made my recommendation to go with the 3%. And part of that is to base it off what we have done for our union contracts. So I can tell you the fire department is in the second year of the union contract with a 3% increase, and we like to balance that between our non-union and our union employees. So that was the impetus for the 3%. The personnel board will take their final recommendation, vote on it tomorrow morning.
Okay. Any questions on that? We want to do, hey, Jill? Are you there, Jill?
I am.
Do you want to do the health department? Or are we
Sure.
holding off?
No, well, I would actually
Wanna
hold off on that because
Okay.
I think that they want to make, they would like to discuss it with you, and I don't think I gave them the opportunity to know that you were gonna talk about it
Okay,
tonight.
okay. All
Oh,
right.
okay,
Anything about the schools tonight, so.
okay.
Okay, all right, so
So
maybe,
I'll give the Board of Health a heads up in case they want to come in and talk about it.
okay, okay.
Okay. Christine, do you
Town-
want me to reach out to them and have a chat before next meeting?
Yeah, why don't you and I touch base and then we can talk to Steve about that.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Okay. All right, so town administrator. Town administrator, is that the last one? If that's the last one.
Yeah. Let's see. This has an increase, in town administration salaries. That's a reflection on an increase that was given to Brittany Franklin, who's in my office, as well as my contract, proposed contract for fiscal year 24. I shouldn't say proposed, my signed contract for 24. This one is fairly straightforward. I don't know if there's any specific questions on anything.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. All right, any no questions, then I guess. Maybe you can maybe we could switch gears to free cash.
Sure.
You wanna put the slide up for everybody?
So our current certified free cash, that's the $4 million number you see at the top. This is slightly higher than I presented to you at the beginning of our budget season. And that is because we added in the opioid stabilization fund. We're currently holding $92,139. That's been transferred to us already from those settlements. I believe Frank made a presentation to you a few meetings ago regarding those settlements. That is now included in our free cash amount, and that will be transferred out with Article 7. That will be transferred to the new opioid stabilization fund that we are creating. The OPUB trust fund, this is our recommendation is to spend $525,000. This is per our financial policy, and this is our increase over last year. We are recommending $850,000 go to the capital stabilization fund. As a reminder, we don't have a dedicated revenue fund for that. We have been using both ARPA money as well as free cash to fund that. Where our municipal building stabilization fund was funded with $1 million override in 2018, which was our very busy year. We are recommending $500,000 to the general stabilization fund. There's an article at town meeting. There's a request from the Affordable Housing Trust for $15,000 from some RFPs and some studies. We're recommending $250,000 for the elementary school feasibility study. And this builds upon the $250,000 that we appropriated at last year's town meeting. So that will give them $500,000 to spend as they work through this new elementary school project. We're also recommending $5,000 to start the vaccine revolving fund. And as I mentioned, the $92,000 for the opioid stabilization fund. This will leave you with an estimated unused free cash of just over 1.7 million. And that is based on our financial policy, the 2.5% that we would need to have on hand. I believe I have to redo this now that we've made some cuts to the budget, but I believe that will bring that up to about 2.6.
Good. So that's free cash. That's the plan for free cash, I guess,
Yeah.
basically.
And so at this point, if the school committee is favorable to cutting the 123, as you discussed earlier, I did review the cuts on the town side with the chair of the board of selectmen this afternoon. That would make this, if you're able to balance that this week, this makes it the second budget in a row. We have not used free cash to balance the operating budget. And per our financial policy, that's really moving us in the right
That's
direction.
very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
And
Right now, you're only off 123,000.
Right.
and the Article
You
22,
beat us to a balanced budget, by the way.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
but the Article 22 to the general,
It's easy.
the general stabilization fund. So in order to move funds out of that, that requires a town meeting article.
To move money out of a general stabilization fund requires 2/3. To put money in is just majority.
Right, so the idea of moving it from certified free cash to the general stabilization is really a more conservative.
Bit more protected.
It's more protected, and remember, the day after town meeting, the free cash is no longer available to be spent.
Right.
It would needs to be recertified before you can spend it.
Yeah.
So that would makes it not available to anybody at
Right,
that point, so we
right.
would wanna,
But just so,
general
so
stabilization,
that
is more
our
of our
new,
savings.
yeah, our new people understand that. Because there's a lot of stabilization funds, right? We've got capital, general and opioid now, but, and others too, I guess, but
Municipal buildings.
municipal building, right? So the general is the one that is sort of our piggy bank, right? It's the one, you know, that along with free cash is really, you know, our piggy bank that. Going back a few years, we kind of depleted it and we're trying to build it back up. It's really important to credit agencies when they rate us. And it's also just important to have savings in case we, you know, if we go into a recession. Rather than laying people off, we can dip into this fund and then replenish it when the economy comes back.
What's our balance in that account? Do you have it off the top of your head?
General stabilization.
I have that. I have that. Let's see.
That's what.
It is, I can tell you that.
Didn't think we were gonna get it to this end.
Is the general stabilization fund the rough equivalent on the state level
So-
of the money they put into what they loosely refer to as the rainy day fund?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
similar, yeah.
So it'd be at the end of 22, so before this transfer, it was 3.6 million.
Oh, okay, so.
Yeah. I have a chart I'll show you later on, but
Yeah.
In the last 2 years,
it's going on the right
Yeah.
trajectory,
Right.
the last 2 years, we've made a commitment, I believe both the last 2 years were $700,000 in there. In 2018, when we started the financial plan policy and started moving towards this. Unfortunately, we started moving in the right direction. I think we made our first in 2019 was our first real deposit into that and moving forward. The problem was COVID hit and we didn't have these reserves built up enough. We didn't have enough in our rainy day fund. And that's why you saw cuts on the town, significant cuts to personnel on the town side and the school side, because
Yeah.
we didn't have the rainy day fund to be able to backfill that. Other towns were more fortunate who had built up those reserves that didn't see the layoffs that we had during COVID.
yeah. So that is the plan for free cash. Okay. We want to talk a little bit about the articles. So everybody should have gotten. They've gotten 2 documents, one, the actual warrant with all the descriptions of the articles, and then. There would have been a 2-page summary of those the assignments of the articles.
Then you get the assignments.
Okay.
Assign.
You got, I could tell you what you gotta sign.
Get the dog.
Yeah, we're waiting for that one to come, Ed. No, it's just, okay, we assigned you 2 articles, Ed. Number 1 was Article 20, which is the school feasibility study. And then the second article is Article 26. On the school committee, power purchase agreement and lease authorization for the solar. Photovoltaic, 2 school related articles. But did everybody else take a look at the assignments and, if you have any, what's that?
Was that a deck mode and email?
It was, it was attached to the one I sent Friday, I think.
All right.
Um,
I'm sure I have it.
I think it was attached to the one I sent Friday. It was attached to the one that had the actual warrant. Did you get the warrant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't get the one. No, I didn't get the warrant.
so you didn't get the actual warrant, okay.
It was sent out on Friday.
Friday, yeah.
You're on it, Ed.
Yeah, the dog, this kind of thing when I have it.
Just see if we have, well, we can put up on.
Maybe you could put this up, yeah, if you have it, you can just show, because it would be helpful to walk through this.
Yep.
We kind of grouped them, this year, Christine has done some grouping in the warrant of different articles. You know, sort of by category, so.
Yeah.
Do you have it? You want me to send it to you?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's good. So, so basically what we do, I guess, is we try to assign articles to members. The goal would be that you sort of are the lead for that article, meaning that you understand that a lot of these articles are fairly straightforward, particularly the financial ones. If you need information, work with Christine. If you need to talk to other people, do that. Some of the articles we need to bring people in before the committee to explain what they're trying to do, particularly with the citizens petitions. The other reason for assigning is at town meeting, you would read the article. Well, that's the other,
Yeah, you'll make, if there's a positive motion, then you'll make.
if there's a positive motion on the article, you would make that motion at town meeting and read it. We try to give everybody a, selection of articles. We try to intentionally pick the non-controversial ones for the new guys. So it's really straightforward. So the town report one is a pretty, it hasn't been done in a couple of years, but I'm told it's ready to go.
We're getting there.
You're getting there, okay. And then articles 2, 3, Jill, we assign those to you. Your personnel administration plan is that long one that has all the different rates and hourly rates and steps and all that stuff, and then the collective bargaining agreement. Bob is going to do that. And the Article 5 on revocation of civil service, Bob's going to do that one. Peter, we assigned you the opioid settlement fund. There's 3 articles there. One's just to create the fund. The other 2 are transfers in and out of the fund. The dollar amounts of it. And I will say that Christine's group helps write up what we read at town meeting, and so unless it's a citizen's petition, then she leave that to us.
I know. But, the next version you'll get that we're working on now is a summary of all the articles, so all the background material and all of that, and the town meeting website's being put together now, so any background material are also included there.
And then
Will 6, 7, and 8 done together, like I would read 6, 7, and 8, and then we would vote on them separately, but
They
we
would
go
read it
together.
separately,
Yeah,
so we would do 6 first, full action on 6.
you read it, then we vote, and you read again, vote,
Okay.
kind of thing.
Okay.
They have to be related, but
Yeah.
I mean, Scott decides the order of kind of which article gets read and voted on. I would assume he tried to do these together.
Yeah.
And then the revolvers, the cemeteries, is kind of a smorgasbord of a bunch of different articles, but it's the new vaccine revolving fund. That one's Jill, and then Peter, there's this Article 10, which is the annual revolving fund expenditure limit. There's a expenditure limit authorization that has to get approved every year. This is one of those articles that comes up every year, sort of current article. And
This one.
are they changing? Are any of them changing?
So we're including and adding the new vaccine
Oh,
revolving.
the
fund.
vaccine, yeah.
So we'll just set an expenditure limit of 10,000, but you can't create a new revolving fund without any money in it, so that's why we're depositing $5,000.
Got it. And then Jeremy, we thought you'd do 10, 11, and 12. Like the DPW connection, I guess. And then Brent, we put you down for the local PEG access appropriation, which is the cable TV, and then the Affordable Housing Trust. Karen, who's not here,
I think Ken is here, Peter.
what's that?
I think 10 was Peter.
Peter?
11 and 12 were Jeremy.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right, yeah, you said 10 wasn't 12 for Jeremy.
oh, sorry, yes, it's 11.
I didn't catch that either thing.
11 and 12 for Jeremy. And then, so Sharon's got the capital, all the capital ones. She's on that committee. And then, Jill, we gave you the construction of the garage at the center since it's the Council on Aging.
Sure, no problem.
Ed, we gave you the feasibility study. And then Mather, you get the prior year's bills. The one that requires 4/5. I'll do the operating,
Can I?
yeah,
I thought it was either 50% or 2/3.
not for that one, that's the one that,
Yeah, a prior bill to an appropriation from a prior year requires forfeit.
4/5, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, usually,
They're
yes,
usually very small.
usually small, because that's the other way they'll pass, with 4/5. I'll do the operating budget. Jeremy, we gave you out the water and sewer articles. One is the operating budget, and then the other are just, there's some surplus bond proceeds from the water treatment plant, and then to rescind the bond authorization for that water treatment plant. And then Ed, this one might require talk, I think the energy,
PPA stands.
that's a power purchase agreement.
Oh,
It's basically the,
Right.
solar, this one might require some coordination with the energy committee. I know they want to come and talk to us about it.
okay, good.
It's Megan Sullivan, I guess.
Is that because of the contract?
They need authorization to enter into the PPA because of the length, as well as the lease. Yeah,
Okay.
and when we did, yeah, when we did the, article in 21, we included just board of selectmen controlled property in town, not the school.
The school committee.
So-
One of the- none of the
That
schools.
committee
It's-
voted on this, that they want to do it?
They're gonna vote.
They're going, yeah, they're,
Yeah, they're working with the energy committee on
I
them.
think they're voting tomorrow or
I think,
sooner, or did they already vote?
no, I think it's coming this week.
Yeah, this week,
Yeah,
yeah,
they'll vote on the actual writing of the article.
Yeah,
They were just
right.
waiting for my final preparation.
yeah, Thursday probably,
Did
yeah.
we get these on that we're not ready to go on the landfill site, but we are ready to go on school property?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, except for the roofs, not ready to go on all the school roofs, some of the school roofs.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one is, we probably would, to have to think about when to bring in, Megan to talk to us about that. I think, my question on that is, have they done some financial analysis to satisfy themselves that this is the right way to go? PPA, you know what I'm saying? Instead of, I mean, I think that's the way the whole town is going, but, I don't know. What they've done on it.
This is not a fair question to put to you, because I know you guys don't specifically deal with the school budget, but is the hope that if you put solar panels up over a number of the schools and go to parking lots at the school, that'll decrease their utility costs in the out years?
And we've done similar way of a PPA ongoing at the, just finalizing construction at the town garage.
Okay.
Did they do pro formas, the savings as well?
On the town garage, I don't know what the energy committee did. I think
That's the question.
well, there was no
what-
pro forma because the selectmen would not vote to do an ownership. The feeling on the board of selectmen, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they've spoken quite frequently at their meetings, is that we don't need another capital asset.
So at least the
Yes,
panels.
and move forward on the energy savings with the PPA rather quickly, rather than designing and owning another asset that we will have to maintain for 20 years.
Right.
Decide what to do at the end of the 20 years.
But yeah, the,
Right.
the trade-off is if you own it, you get a better rate.
Sure you do.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
So there's-
headaches.
You You get all the headaches, but
We're still struggling through, we don't have a dedicated funding source for the capital budget committee. We've been, for the capital budget stabilization fund, we've done really well with free cash. And the warrant committee has been very generous in building that fund up and allowing us to start to fund a lot of our neglected projects over the last 20, 30 years, not having a real capital plan in place. Having to lay out, well, I think the town garage would have been $450,000 investment. We just didn't have the funding to be able to do that. So the PPA was able to be done a lot quicker. And we can see that savings realization.
yeah. Then we get to Mather, I guess, we put you down for the change of hours for noise bylaw.
Okay.
Shouldn't be controversial. I think it's just
It's a
a
wording.
1 hour change on the weekend or something like that.
Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's the one we're gonna talk about a lot.
You never know, right? There's always one that is a surprise.
Someone will get worked up about it, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
And then Bob, gonna do the water conservation private well restrictions. This is an article that is, gonna make private wells subject to the conservation restrictions that the rest of the town.
So,
Right now, they're not subject
so
to,
they can water their lawn now, they can't under the new.
well, if this passes,
Right.
they have to abide by everyone,
Right.
everyone else's rule. And then,
That's gonna get some controversy.
you want?
Not at all. Just, that's one of the benefits of having a well.
Well, that's it, particularly,
You get
on the one hand, I could see if you spent, $10,000 or whatever it costs to put a private well in, and then. I mean, what if you did that last year, and then this bylaw passes, and you can't use it, it's like.
You can use your wells, this,
You can,
you can continue to use your
You
well.
can
just
use
can't
it if, well,
get to the end of the
yeah,
same water restrictions.
you can't use it to water your lawn
If the restrictions.
if the restrictions are in place.
Right,
Right,
right.
right. So that's the, and somebody might argue too that this is on my private property.
Right.
Why are you telling me what to do on my private property? So that's the trade-off. I understand both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or you get somebody who put the lawn and the well in last year, both.
yeah, yeah. And then there's an Article 29 to amend the school building committee bylaw. And that one, we're just waiting to see what's gonna happen with that. That might, we don't know right now, it's a board of selectmen. And it's narrowly worded currently to just do have the ability to do an ad hoc appointment, non-voting, an ad hoc appointment to this committee. And the selectmen would have the authority to do an ad hoc appointment that would be non-voting to this committee. So. Yeah, that's the way it is right now, so. But we'll see what, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that particular article. Then we have the citizens petitions, and we'll have to have these people come before us to talk about these and explain, what's involved with them. So we'll have to schedule these, but they're basically the school committee public hearing one is. That, as I understand it, is, I haven't read the whole article, it's fairly long, but it's to require public hearings at the school committee. As long as a certain amount of notice given. So citizens can require a public hearing on any topic before the school committee. As long as they give the, certain amount of notice, and the school committee would have to hold a public hearing on that topic.
Any topic? There's no
I
limit.
don't, yeah, I don't think there's a restriction on it.
So, in other words,
You would think it'd be
a
deal
group
with
of
school.
citizens could set an agenda for the elected school committee?
Yeah, I think that's what, I mean, you have to read it closely.
Position at 25.
You'll-
It's a
25.
committee on top of a committee.
Yeah, it's, I have to study a little bit more, and we'll have to get a further understanding, but that's my understanding, is kind of, you know, high level what they're trying to do. And we'll probably should talk to the school committee too, obviously,
Right,
to see what their views on this is.
yeah, I mean, you know,
One can speculate.
They have a public comment section in every school committee meeting where people can get up and talk about, and, you know, any agenda item they want. So
Yeah, this is
that already
different. though.
happens, and that's public.
Yeah, this is different, though. This is a hearing.
Well, yeah, that is.
Requires posting.
Posting, and
Right.
yeah.
But if you're, the purpose of the hearing is to have people comment upon whatever subject it is. And that's the purpose of the open meeting, the
Right.
portion. is
It's the
is
public
same.
comment, yeah.
The only thing it is, it hasn't been posted. I mean, it's posted 48 hours in advance, I guess, because you have to publish your agenda. But there's always an opportunity to speak to whatever issue. So that's where I get most of it.
Have we received,
You need a public hearing when you already have a hearing that can be public.
have we received guidance from legal counsel, town council on jurisdiction of the town to?
I don't know what his official review is. You'd have to have him to have.
I mean, this would be one to take some time.
Yeah, it's gonna take some time, yeah,
Plan on some time on this one.
yeah,
Who is this designed to?
me.
Congrats.
Yeah. Then there's another article here on compensation transparency, and that. Christine, I'm gonna let you explain this one.
So I don't think I should explain any of them because they're citizen petitions.
Okay, all
So
right,
I think
all right.
it would be appropriate to have.
All right, well, I'll give you my view on it. I'll give you my view on it. It's basically, it is, basically a request to have, all compensation printed in the warrant. And
Yeah,
so-
a lot of questions. on this
And
one.
so,
Well, I can-
and, you know, I think there's been conversations with this on this particular article. And the town is, my understanding is the town has voluntarily agreed to do this on the website.
And
instead
in
of-
the annual report,
And in the annual report,
which is the more appropriate place for it. rather than-
instead of costing money to make this document an
Well,
extra
it's
100
just-
pages. You know,
And
so-
it's not just the cost, well, I guess I'm gonna talk about, it. It's not just the costing of money, it's, town meeting doesn't have the authority to negotiate or set salaries. That's up to the personnel board, the board of selectmen, school committee.
Yeah.
Town meeting can only weigh in on the bottom line between personnel and operations, they cannot set salaries. So it would be inappropriate to give anybody at town meeting the ability, wouldn't be fair for people to think that they could then debate those salaries on town meeting floor. So we thought the better opportunity for this was to put it in the annual town report, which many of the towns already do. I'm not sure why Medfield never did, but we're more than happy to start doing that with the 23 town meeting. 23 town report, and then 22. And then put it on the website. I mean, I think those are two easy things to address it, but I know that Mr. Green still wants to have a conversation with you about it, and he should discuss why he thinks it should be in the warrant report versus the others, so.
Okay,
Questions out for council, if this could be binding at all, even if it passed, is it truly binding?
is it binding? Yeah,
Require that
Yeah.
information on the warrant.
Yeah, you can have Mark. come in and
Mark,
discuss that.
yeah, we'll have
But
to,
his initial feeling, because he met with Mr. Green, the initial feeling was no, and we thought we had come up with a solution for this, but I think he would still like to move forward with the article. But we're more than happy to print it, it's just we'll print it in a different
Yeah,
format.
it's a
a
better
different-
format,
Yeah.
better form.
Mhm, exactly.
In principle, I have no problem with, you know, having it on your website, list everybody, that's fine.
It's public information, anybody can walk in tomorrow and ask
Right.
for it, so.
Yeah.
it's just wasting money. It's like, if you're interested, just go to the website. You got it all there.
If
Print it out yourself.
But it's information purposes only at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Public
something,
information.
something we don't vote and say, I'm not gonna pay that individual that amount, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of other mitigating factors.
It's the
to that.
prior,
There's
it's the
collective
prior
bargaining
year's salary,
agreements
not the
and
proposed, isn't it?
Right.
So it's already history. So you can't-
Right,
It's already get paid.
right.
Sure.
So
Too late.
again, another one, so a couple of those, the council will have, should be
Yeah.
put together one of these evenings. right?
Yeah.
I guess it's. I'm not town council, so I should presumably shut up, but it doesn't sound illegal to me. To say such and such shall be printed in the warrant, there's no,
Right.
there's no legal thing that's leaping out at me. But
Well,
a lot of it,
it'd be good,
municipal law, I don't-
we will have to have the session when this comes up, or Mr.
I
Green.
think what probably couldn't happen is somebody can't make a motion to change compensation.
no, that's the part, and that was Christine's point, I think that's the real danger, that someone says, I really feel the principal at. Let me just posit, I have no idea that the principal at Wheelock is paid less than the principal at the high school, and I don't know if that's the case or not, and don't wanna know. But someone says, oh, I think the principal at Wheelock should be paid just as much as the principal at the high school, let's have a vote on this today. That's absolutely what you don't wanna
Right.
have happen.
Yeah,
And it's not relevant for town meeting.
Yeah.
The moderator wouldn't even be able to consider it.
right,
Right,
right. And then Article 32 is the creation of a groundwater protection committee. I don't know if you saw that it was a presentation by Jeff Hyman and someone else at the selectmen's meeting a couple weeks ago on sort of the purpose of this article. And there's again, this is another committee that they want to focus on the quality of groundwater.
And this is just an advisory,
Yes,
just an advisory. They have no clout, if you will. It's just another opinion.
right, yeah,
Yeah, and it seems like an incomplete article. It doesn't even say who, how would this committee be appointed by whom?
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So we gave this one to Bob.
So another committee.
But I mean, the
The team. guys.
the issues you get into here are like, well, do you need another committee to? If somebody has an interest in these issues, can they work with the existing committees? Because there's like, you got the Water Sewer Board, you got the
Right.
Board of Health. and-
Well, yeah, the Board of Health is really regulated.
Yeah, and then you got the state. that,
Yeah, the
that-
state dictates.
The
all
state
the-
regulates public water very, very seriously.
Right.
So, but, it's just, we gotta consider it, I guess, and we'll have to
We
move.
got, you know,
Yeah,
they made a presentation to the select board and stuff.
correct.
And the selectmen had a number of questions, which I think will have, you're addressing in this general conversation. We'll
Yeah.
get to the specifics. And
we'll probably have to meet with some of these
Yes.
other boards
Yeah.
to say, what are your
Yeah.
views on this too?
I think water and sewer comes in there too, right?
Yeah, water and sewer, I forgot about 10,
In
yeah,
terms of the responsibility for the.
town, yeah. So,
Proceed at work.
and then this last one is just a catch-all for free cash. That we might not.
We're not planning on,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to be dismissed.
Yes. So those are the articles.
So Frank, your job is to get 250 people to be your closest friends and neighbors to come on. Bless you.
That's you.
Thank you.
All right. How we doing on time? We're getting there. Getting through all of this, I guess. Update from town finance. Do you have anything you want to add?
Your budget worksheet tonight, I know you talked about it with Dr. Martin and the school committee, we've mentioned the town. I've made some revisions to their budget, so we're currently at a delta, $123,000 current, so.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we'll balance that.
Yeah, the town, did make, you know, as there always is with the town, it's a bunch of little things that add up to, you know. So we were small, some of them in the fixed cost area, as she mentioned tonight, around insurance and. I think the snow and ice, they looked at that budget, given the year we had, and got some savings there. And I think, you know, I think the selectmen are gonna look at this and vote on all this. What you're proposing on the operating budget. Yeah,
I think it's curious how much on the municipal side were you in?
So we were able to reduce our requests on the fixed cost reductions. We went down $122,000. That was, we made a reduction of 20,000 to the worker compensation account, with the caveat that if any of the cuts on the town or school side resulted in layoffs, then we would not need to restore that 20,000. The property insurance deductible change is 27,000, and then we're able to drop the snow and ice 7,000 down to 25. And then those are our fixed costs, and then in terms of the town's budget, reducing our full-time request for conservation agent down to half, which is a $35,000 reduction. Cutting the cemetery budget by 17,500. And then we have a highway position, we would propose a savings of $25,000 and not fill that vacant position until January of 2024.
that's
We pulled the advertisement on Friday, and we'll hold funding now until January.
a 6-month delay.
So that's a little, just over 77,000 on the town.
Yeah, so all of that, yeah, so I mean, yeah, it seems relatively modest ask of the schools to fund 123 since you found all this prior.
Yeah, that was, you know, I think what we looked at was sort of a proportionate decrease in the percentages of both buckets. And these numbers get us there so that, you know, they're, gets us down to below 4%. You know, when you look at 2022 to 23, it gets it down to a 4% increase, less than 3.96 or something like that on both sides, so.
And it being below the 4%, I think is a big deal. You know, those numbers were,
Yeah,
given where it all started with salaries and all.
yeah.
Good effort.
So, I mean, we're hopeful, you know, I think it's been a good faith effort on everybody's part to
Absolutely.
try to solve the puzzle. We just need everybody to approve it now. So,
Maybe early to claim victory, but it's been a terrific work, you know, by the town, and Steve, some of your analysis on this. And Frank, you made a great contribution, so thank you. It's been very good. The detail and the backup is, and of course with the schools as well. So I think it's just been a collaborative effort.
one agenda item we did not talk about was the minutes. I forget who has tonight's meeting, who's supposed to keep.
I don't know who that.
Boy, I'm surprised you made a lot of comments tonight.
Well, there is a recording, I know there's.
Tend to be terse.
Generally speaking, when you have the minutes, you kind of don't say anything. Keep it short.
Put a link to the website where the video is and say, as per attached.
Oh, sorry, okay, sorry. Okay, there's a comment from Chris Potts. In a nutshell, just for warrant committee member benefit, the basic function of the citizens petition I filed is to ensure school committee public hearing is held on an important topic if a certain number of people, 25, request it. The posting is just an administrative aspect of the petition. I felt it was important to make this clear for the record, whether you acknowledge comment or not, since the verbal description wasn't accurate. Thank you. Okay. So we're gonna have Kristen to educate us all on exactly what her thoughts are. And she'll have a chance to explain it all.
Yep.
And we'll probably talk to the school committee too. All right, so on the minutes, just a reminder to, when they are done, to send them to, when we approve them, okay, after you draft them, we approve them at this meeting, to send a copy to Frank and Brittany. And then they'll post it to the website. So there's still there's a few outstanding ones, that we have approved that haven't made it to the website. So, just take a look at that sheet I sent out that has the tracking of, which ones are outstanding and then next meeting, we still have, I know Mather was working on his and Jeremy's got a set. And you'll have it. What's the rule? You have to go, you can't go more than 3 meetings or 30 days
Yeah, I think the guidance is 3 meetings.
before it's a violation, okay?
He's stretched out that.
He took the days into years, but that's his prerogative.
All right, well, I don't think unless there's anything else anybody wants, rather, there's nothing to update us on the building committee, right? Okay.
No, we haven't met since the last update. We meet on the 29th after the next warrant committee meeting.
Yeah, okay. Other than that, I think we're ready for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor and say.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
and Mather,
Yes, yes.
Jill,
Yes.
okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Motion passed.